I worked 3 jobs to put my husband through medical school. I sold my grandmother's jewelry to pay for his supplies. I gave up my own dreams so he could become a doctor. The day he graduated, he handed me divorce papers and said he was marrying his study partner. He thought he was getting rid of dead weight. 5 years later, I own his practice, his house, and his new wife works for me. Never underestimate a woman with nothing left to lose. This is my story of how I went from betrayed wife to the woman who controls everything my ex-husband thought he could take from me. My name is Emma, and I need to take you back to where this all started. 8 years ago, I was 28 years old, working as a nurse at Riverside Medical Center. That's where I met Marcus Rodriguez. He was a pre-med student, brilliant, charming, and completely broke. Marcus had big dreams but no money to make them happen. His parents had disowned him for choosing medicine over taking over their construction business. He was working as a security guard at the hospital while taking classes during the day. Most people saw a guy with no future. I saw potential. We started dating after he asked me to help him study for his anatomy exam. I was drawn to his drive and determination. Marcus worked harder than anyone I knew. He would study until 3 a.m., then get up at 6 a.m. for his security shift. I admired that. What I didn't know was that this same determination would later be used to destroy me. Our relationship moved fast. Within 6 months, we were living together in my tiny apartment. Marcus couldn't afford rent, so I covered everything. I didn't mind. I was investing in our future, or so I thought. When Marcus got accepted to medical school, I was over the moon. Finally, all his hard work was paying off. But then reality hit. Medical school was expensive. Really expensive. We're talking about $60,000 per year just for tuition, plus books, supplies, and living expenses. Marcus sat me down one night and said we had 2 choices. He could take out massive student loans and graduate with $300,000 in debt, or we could find another way. That other way meant me working more to support us both while he focused on school. I want you to understand something about who I was back then. I believed in love. I believed in partnership. I believed that when you find your person, you do whatever it takes to build a life together. So when Marcus looked at me with those hopeful eyes and asked if I could help him through school, I didn't hesitate. I said yes. That decision changed everything. I picked up a second job at a private clinic on weekends. Then I started doing overnight shifts at a nursing home. 3 jobs, 7 days a week. I was making decent money, but it all went to Marcus's education. The first year wasn't too bad. Marcus was grateful. He would cook dinner when I came home exhausted. He would rub my feet and tell me how much he appreciated everything I was doing. He made me feel like we were a team. By the second year of medical school, money was getting tight again. Marcus needed more supplies, more books, and the cost of everything kept going up. That's when he mentioned the jewelry. My grandmother had left me her jewelry collection when she died. It wasn't huge, but it had some valuable pieces. A diamond necklace my grandfather gave her for their 25th anniversary. Pearl earrings from her mother. A gold bracelet with sapphires that had been in our family for 3 generations. Marcus brought it up casually at first. "You never wear your grandmother's jewelry anyway," he said. "Maybe we could sell a piece or two just to get through this semester." I was hesitant. This jewelry was all I had left of my grandmother. She raised me after my parents died in a car accident when I was 12. Those pieces weren't just jewelry to me, they were memories. But Marcus was struggling in his organic chemistry class. He said he needed a private tutor, and tutors were expensive. He looked so stressed, so overwhelmed. I couldn't stand to see him like that. So I sold the pearl earrings first, got $800 for them. Marcus was so relieved and grateful. He hugged me and promised he would buy me even better pearls once he was making doctor money. 6 months later, he needed money for his medical board prep courses. The gold bracelet went next. $1,200 that time. Then came the big one. Third year of medical school, and Marcus was applying for residency programs. Application fees, travel costs for interviews, new suits for meetings with program directors. He needed $5,000. The diamond necklace was worth exactly $5,000. I remember holding it in my hands the night before I took it to the jewelry store. My grandmother wore this necklace on her wedding day. She wore it to every important event in her life, and I was about to sell it to pay for my boyfriend's education. Marcus found me crying in the bedroom. He sat next to me and took my hands. "Emma," he said, "I know this is hard. But think about it this way. Your grandmother would want you to be happy, right? She would want us to have a good life together. This necklace is going to help me become a doctor. It's going to give us the future she would have wanted for you." He made it sound so reasonable, so noble even, like selling my grandmother's necklace was honoring her memory instead of destroying it. I sold it the next day. Fourth year of medical school, Marcus proposed. It was nothing fancy. We were eating takeout Chinese food in our apartment when he pulled out a simple ring and asked me to marry him. "Emma," he said, "I know these have been hard years. I know you've given up so much for me, but it's almost over. I match into residency in a few months, and then we can start our real life together. I want you to be my wife. I want to spend the rest of my life making up for everything you've done for me." I said yes, of course. I loved him, and more than that, I needed to believe that all my sacrifices had been worth something. I needed to believe that the woman who had sold her grandmother's jewelry and worked herself to exhaustion for 3 years was going to get her happy ending. We had a small wedding. I paid for it, naturally. Marcus was focused on his residency interviews and couldn't be bothered with wedding planning. My sister Jenna was my maid of honor, and she kept asking me if I was sure about marrying someone who let me pay for everything. "It's temporary," I kept telling her. "Once he's a doctor, everything will change." Jenna didn't look convinced, but she didn't push it. Looking back, I think she could see something I couldn't. Or maybe I just didn't want to see it. The wedding was beautiful, though. Simple, but beautiful. Marcus looked handsome in his rented tux. And when he said his vows about how he couldn't wait to take care of me the way I had taken care of him, I believed every word. We honeymooned for 3 days at a bed and breakfast 2 hours away. That's all we could afford. And honestly, that's all I could take off work. Marcus graduated medical school with honors. I was so proud watching him walk across that stage in his cap and gown. Finally, after 4 years of sacrifice, we had made it. Dr. Marcus Rodriguez. It had a nice ring to it. The graduation party was at his study group's apartment. That's where I first met Isabella Santos. She was also graduating, also going into internal medicine like Marcus. She was beautiful in that effortless way some women are. Dark hair, perfect skin, confident smile. She knew she was smart and wasn't afraid to show it. Marcus introduced us, and Isabella shook my hand with a grip that was a little too firm. "So you're the famous Emma," she said. "Marcus talks about you all the time. He says you put him through school." There was something in her voice, not quite mockery, but not respect either. Like she was sizing me up and finding me lacking. "We put each other through school," I corrected. "It was a team effort." Isabella smiled. "That's sweet. Marcus is lucky to have someone so supportive." The way she said supportive made it sound like an insult. Marcus and Isabella spent most of the party talking shop about residency programs and medical procedures. I tried to join their conversations, but I wasn't a doctor. I was just a nurse who had paid for one of them to become a doctor. At one point, I overheard Isabella say to Marcus, It must be nice having someone who's willing to sacrifice everything for your dreams. Not everyone is that lucky. Marcus glanced over at me and quickly changed the subject. That night, driving home, I asked Marcus about Isabella. She seems confident, I said. She's brilliant, Marcus replied. Top 5% of our class. She's going to be a great doctor. Is she single? Marcus was quiet for a moment. I think so. Why? No reason. Just curious. But I wasn't just curious. Something about the way Isabella looked at Marcus, the way she spoke to him, set off alarm bells in my head. There was a familiarity there that went beyond study partners. I pushed the thought away. Marcus had just graduated medical school. We were about to start our new life together. I wasn't going to let jealousy ruin this moment. Besides, I trusted my husband. After everything we had been through together, after everything I had sacrificed for him, I trusted him completely. That trust was about to be shattered in the most brutal way possible. Marcus matched into his residency program at Metropolitan Hospital. It was a good program, competitive, and exactly what he wanted. Isabella matched there too. What a coincidence. The first year of residency was brutal for Marcus. 100-hour work weeks, constant stress, and very little money. Residents don't make much, barely $50,000 a year for all those hours. But I didn't mind. I was still working my 3 jobs, and I figured we were investing in our future. Marcus was different during residency, though. More distant. More tired. He would come home and barely speak to me before falling asleep on the couch. When I tried to talk to him about our relationship, about our future plans, he would say he was too stressed to think about anything except work. "Give me time, Emma," he would say. "Residency is hell. Once I get through this, things will go back to normal." But they didn't go back to normal. They got worse. Marcus started spending more time at the hospital, even on his days off. He said he was studying, preparing for his board exams, catching up on research. When I offered to bring him dinner or visit him at work, he always had an excuse for why that wouldn't work. "The attendings don't like personal visits during work hours," he would say. Or, "I'm in the research library and they have strict policies about noise." I started to feel like I was living with a stranger. The man who used to cook dinner for me and rub my feet had been replaced by someone who barely acknowledged my existence. My sister Jenna noticed the change when she visited for Marcus's birthday. "He seems different," she said. "More arrogant, less grateful." I defended him, of course. "He's under a lot of pressure. Residency is really hard." "Emma," Jenna said, "pressure doesn't change who someone really is. It reveals who they really are." I wish I had listened to her. 6 months into residency, I found the first real evidence that something was wrong. Marcus left his laptop open one night when he fell asleep on the couch. I was going to close it for him when I saw he had a text message conversation open. The messages were from Isabella. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow," one message read. "Last night was incredible." My heart stopped. I scrolled up to see more messages. "Marcus, you make me feel alive in a way I never have before. I love the way you touch me. I can't stop thinking about you." And Marcus's responses: "You're amazing, Bella. I've never felt this way about anyone. Being with you feels like coming home. I love you. I love you." He told her he loved her. I sat there staring at those messages for what felt like hours. My husband, the man I had sacrificed everything for, was having an affair with his study partner. The woman I had met at his graduation party, who had looked at me with such condescension, was sleeping with my husband. When Marcus woke up, I confronted him. I showed him his own messages and waited for an explanation. He didn't deny it. He just looked tired and annoyed, like I was bothering him with something trivial. "Emma," he said, "this isn't what you think. What I think is that you're cheating on me with Isabella." It's complicated. No, Marcus, it's not complicated. You're married. To me, and you're telling another woman you love her. That's called adultery. Marcus rubbed his face with his hands. You wouldn't understand. Isabella and I, we have a connection. We understand each other's work, each other's goals. We're on the same level. The same level? What does that mean? It means she's a doctor, Emma. She gets it. She gets me. I felt like he had slapped me. And I don't get you? After 4 years of supporting you, of working 3 jobs so you could become a doctor, I don't get you. That's not what I meant? Then what did you mean? Marcus looked at me with an expression I had never seen before. Cold. Distant. Like he was looking at a stranger. I meant that you're a nurse, Emma. You're a good nurse, but you're not a doctor. Isabella and I are building careers together. We're equals. We're partners in a way that you and I can never be. The words hit me like a physical blow. After everything I had given up for him, everything I had sacrificed, he was telling me I wasn't good enough for him because I wasn't a doctor. I demanded that Marcus end things with Isabella immediately. I told him we could work through this if he cut off all contact with her outside of work and committed to rebuilding our marriage. Marcus agreed, but I could tell his heart wasn't in it. He said he would end things with Isabella, but he didn't seem sorry. He seemed inconvenienced. For a few weeks, things seemed to improve. Marcus came home earlier. He talked to me more. He even cooked dinner a couple of times, just like he used to. But I couldn't shake the feeling that he was just going through the motions. When he kissed me, it felt mechanical. When he said he loved me, it sounded like he was reading lines from a script, and I was right to be suspicious. Marcus hadn't ended things with Isabella. He had just gotten better at hiding them. I found out by accident. I was having lunch with a friend who worked at Metropolitan Hospital, and she mentioned seeing Marcus and Isabella together at a conference the previous weekend. They looked very cozy, she said innocently. I didn't know they were such good friends. Marcus had told me he was at a medical conference, but he said he was going alone. He said it was boring stuff that I wouldn't be interested in. When I confronted him again, he didn't even try to lie. Yes, Isabella was there, he said. We presented research together. You told me you were going alone. I didn't think you needed to know every detail of my work schedule. This isn't about your work schedule, Marcus. This is about you lying to me so you could spend a weekend with the woman you're having an affair with. We didn't sleep together, he said, but he couldn't look me in the eye when he said it. Do you think I'm stupid? Do you really think I believe that? Marcus finally looked at me, and what I saw in his eyes was worse than anger or guilt. It was pity. Emma, he said, I think we need to talk about our future. 3 months later, on the day Marcus officially became doctor. Rodriguez, after passing his board exams, he handed me divorce papers. I had just gotten home from my shift at the nursing home. It was 7 a.m., and I was exhausted. Marcus was sitting at our kitchen table in his scrubs, looking like he had been waiting for me. We need to talk, he said. I sat down across from him, and he slid a manila envelope across the table. What's this? I asked, though I think I already knew. Divorce papers. I've already signed them. I stared at the envelope like it was a snake that might bite me. Marcus, what are you doing? I'm ending our marriage, Emma. It's over. Because of Isabella. Isabella is part of it, but it's bigger than that. Emma, we want different things. We're different people. I'm a doctor now, and I need to be with someone who understands that world. I understand your world. I've been supporting your world for 5 years. You've been supporting my education, he corrected. But now that I'm actually practicing medicine, I need a partner who can match my ambitions. Isabella and I are going to open a practice together. We're going to build something together. We're equals. What about everything I sacrificed for you? What about my grandmother's jewelry? What about the 5 years I worked 3 jobs to put you through school? Marcus shrugged. I'm grateful for what you did. But that was an investment in my education, not a guarantee of marriage. People change, Emma. I've changed. I felt like I was drowning. You can't just throw away our marriage like this. I'm not throwing it away. I'm ending something that isn't working anymore. It was working fine until you decided you were too good for me. That's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been you getting student loans instead of me selling my grandmother's jewelry. Fair would have been you working while going to school instead of me working 3 jobs. Fair would have been you being honest about your feelings instead of cheating on me with Isabella. Marcus stood up. I don't want to fight about this, Emma. My mind is made up. I'm moving out this weekend. Isabella and I are getting a place together. You're moving in with her? Yes. How long have you two been planning this? It doesn't matter. It matters to me. How long, Marcus? He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, About a year. A year. He had been planning to leave me for a year while I was still working 3 jobs to support him, while I was still believing in our future together. You bastard, I whispered. Emma, please don't make this harder than it has to be. Harder than it has to be? You're destroying our marriage to be with another woman, and you want me to make it easy for you? I want you to be reasonable. We can do this amicably. I don't want to hurt you more than necessary. More than necessary. Like there was a necessary amount of hurt involved in abandoning your wife for another woman. The divorce proceedings were brutal. Marcus had hired a good lawyer. I couldn't afford one, so I represented myself. Marcus wanted to keep everything. The car I had bought. The apartment that was in both our names, but that I had been paying rent on for 5 years. Even my grandmother's jewelry that I had already sold to pay for his education. He wanted me to acknowledge that those sales were gifts to him, not loans. But the worst part was when his lawyer argued that I wasn't entitled to any spousal support because our marriage had been short-term and because I had a stable income from my nursing jobs. Stable income. 3 jobs, 7 days a week, was considered stable income. Short-term marriage. 5 years together. But apparently that didn't count for much when one person was a doctor and the other was just a nurse. The judge awarded me half the value of our shared assets, which wasn't much. Marcus got to keep his medical degree, his earning potential, and his new girlfriend. I got to keep my exhaustion and my broken heart. On the day our divorce was finalized, Marcus actually had the nerve to approach me outside the courthouse. Emma, he said, I hope we can be friends someday. I really do care about you. You're a good person, and you deserve to be happy. I looked at him standing there in his expensive suit, looking successful and confident, and I felt something I had never felt before. It wasn't sadness or anger. It was pure, cold hatred. Marcus, I said, I want you to remember this moment. I want you to remember how you're feeling right now, how confident you are, how sure you are that you've made the right choice. Because someday, when you're not feeling quite so successful, I want you to think back to this conversation. What's that supposed to mean? It means that you made a mistake. The biggest mistake of your life. And someday, you're going to realize that. Marcus laughed. Emma, I know you're hurt, but threatening me isn't going to change anything. I'm not threatening you, Marcus. I'm making you a promise. The months after the divorce were the darkest period of my life. I moved into a tiny studio apartment that I could barely afford even with my 3 jobs. I was working myself to death just to pay basic expenses. Meanwhile, Marcus and Isabella were living their perfect life together. I heard through mutual friends that they had gotten engaged 6 months after our divorce was final. They were both successful residents at prestigious hospitals. They were planning to open a private practice together once their residencies ended. Everything I had dreamed of having with Marcus, he was building with Isabella. But I wasn't just sitting around feeling sorry for myself. I was planning. See, Marcus had made one crucial mistake. He thought that because he had a medical degree and I was just a nurse, he was smarter than me. He thought he had won completely and that I was defeated. What he didn't realize was that spending 5 years supporting someone through medical school teaches you a lot about the medical field. I understood how hospitals worked, how medical practices operated, how the business side of healthcare functioned. I had been paying attention all those years, even when Marcus thought I was just his financial support system. And Marcus had underestimated something else about me. I wasn't just a nurse. I was a nurse with nothing left to lose. When you lose everything, your marriage, your savings, your dreams, your future, you have a choice. You can give up, or you can get creative. I chose to get creative. The first thing I did was go back to school. I enrolled in a business administration program with a focus on healthcare management. I used my divorce settlement money to pay for it. If Marcus wanted to be with someone on his level, then I would rise to his level and beyond. The second thing I did was start networking. I began attending every healthcare conference, every medical society meeting, every professional event I could get invited to. I made connections. I learned names. I figured out how the healthcare industry really worked. The third thing I did was start documenting everything I learned about Marcus and Isabella's plans, where they wanted to practice, what kind of medical group they wanted to join, what their career goals were. I wasn't stalking them. I was just paying attention. And in the medical community, information travels fast. Marcus thought he had seen the last of me when we signed those divorce papers. He thought I would fade into the background of his successful new life. He was wrong. I was just getting started. 2 years after the divorce, I graduated with my MBA in healthcare administration. I had maintained my nursing job, but now I also had the business credentials to move into healthcare management. My first break came when I got hired as an operations manager at Riverside Medical Group, a large practice that managed several smaller clinics throughout the city. The job paid twice what I was making as a nurse, and it gave me insight into how medical practices really operated. I was good at the work. Really good. I understood both the clinical side and the business side, which made me valuable to the doctors I worked with. Within a year, I was promoted to director of operations. But I wasn't just focused on my career. I was also building something else, a network of connections throughout the medical community. I made friends with hospital administrators, medical device sales reps, insurance company executives, and other healthcare professionals. And I was learning everything I could about Marcus and Isabella. They had finished their residencies and were working at Metropolitan Hospital as attending physicians. They were engaged and planning a wedding, and they were actively looking for partners to help them start their own practice. That's where I saw my opportunity. Through my connections at Riverside Medical Group, I learned that Marcus and Isabella had approached several potential partners about joining their planned practice. They needed established doctors with patient lists and financial backing to make their dream practice viable. I also learned something else interesting. Marcus and Isabella were both carrying significant debt from medical school, despite the fact that I had helped pay for Marcus's education. Apparently, Isabella had taken out substantial loans, and Marcus had taken additional loans during his final year of medical school and residency. Starting their own practice was going to require serious capital, and they didn't have it. That's when I began implementing my plan. I started by making myself indispensable to the doctors at Riverside Medical Group. I streamlined their operations, negotiated better contracts with insurance companies, and increased their profitability by 30% in my first year as director. But more importantly, I started building relationships with the exact doctors that Marcus and Isabella were trying to recruit for their practice. Dr. James Patterson was one of the most successful internists in the city. He had a huge patient list and was looking for younger partners to help expand his practice. Marcus and Isabella had been courting him for months. I made sure to work closely with Dr. Patterson on several projects at Riverside. I helped him restructure his clinic's operations and saved him thousands of dollars in overhead costs. We developed a professional relationship that gradually became a friendship. Dr. Sarah Kim was another target. She was a cardiologist with an established practice who was interested in joining a larger medical group. Again, Marcus and Isabella had been trying to convince her to partner with them. I attended the same healthcare conferences as Dr. Kim. I made sure to introduce myself and offer helpful insights about healthcare management. Over several months, we became colleagues and friends. I did this with 4 other doctors that Marcus and Isabella were targeting. I became their trusted business advisor, their friend, their ally in the healthcare community. And then I waited for the right moment to make my move. Marcus and Isabella's wedding was the social event of the year in the medical community. Everyone who was anyone in healthcare was invited. Doctors, hospital administrators, pharmaceutical executives. I wasn't invited, of course, but I didn't need to be. The week before the wedding, I had lunch with Dr. Patterson. Jim, I said, I heard you're considering joining that new practice with Dr. Rodriguez and Dr. Santos. I am, he said. They're both bright young doctors. I think it could be a good partnership. I'm sure they are talented clinically, I said. But have you looked into their business experience? Their financial backing? Dr. Patterson frowned. What do you mean? Well, starting a practice is a huge financial undertaking. You want to make sure your partners have the business acumen and the capital to make it work. Have they presented you with a detailed business plan, financial projections, evidence of their management experience? They've shown me some preliminary numbers, Dr. Patterson said, but he sounded uncertain. Jim, you're risking your reputation and your financial security on this partnership. Don't you think you should do some due diligence? Maybe have an independent healthcare consultant review their business plan? I happen to know a healthcare consultant. Me. Over the next few days, I had similar conversations with Dr. Kim and the other doctors Marcus and Isabella were trying to recruit. I didn't say anything negative about them directly. I just raised reasonable questions about their business experience and financial stability. And then I offered to help. As a friend. As someone who cared about their success. Why don't you let me take a look at their proposal? I suggested to each of them. I can give you an objective assessment of whether their numbers add up. Marcus and Isabella's business plan was a disaster. I could see that within an hour of reviewing it. Their financial projections were wildly optimistic. They had underestimated startup costs by at least 40% and overestimated first-year revenue by about the same amount. They had no experience managing a business, no understanding of healthcare economics, and no realistic plan for how they were going to compete with established practices in the area. But the real problem was their debt. Between the two of them, Marcus and Isabella owed over $400,000 in student loans. They had credit card debt, car payments, and a mortgage on the expensive condo they had bought together. Their debt-to-income ratio was so high that no bank would give them a business loan without substantial collateral. They were essentially asking established, successful doctors to bankroll their lifestyle while they learned how to run a business. I prepared detailed analyses of their business plan for each of the doctors they were trying to recruit. I didn't editorialize or make personal comments. I just presented the facts. The numbers spoke for themselves. Dr. Patterson was the first to withdraw from consideration. Emma, he said, thank you for reviewing this. I had no idea their financial situation was so precarious. I can't risk my practice on partners who are this over-leveraged. Dr. Kim was next. Their revenue projections are completely unrealistic, she told me. There's no way they can generate this kind of income in their first year. They're either delusional or dishonest. One by one, every doctor Marcus and Isabella had been counting on to finance their practice backed out. 3 days before their wedding, Marcus called me. It was the first time we had spoken since the divorce. Emma, he said, I need to ask you something. What? Did you have anything to do with our potential partners backing out of the practice deal? I'm not sure what you're talking about, Marcus. Don't play dumb. 5 doctors who were ready to join our practice suddenly changed their minds this week. That's not a coincidence. Maybe they just realized your business plan was unrealistic. There was a long silence. Then Marcus said, What did you do? I didn't do anything illegal or unethical, if that's what you're asking. I simply provided some business analysis to doctors who requested it. I thought they deserved to know what they were getting into. You sabotaged us. No, Marcus. I gave them accurate information about your financial situation and business experience. If that information caused them to change their minds, maybe you should ask yourself why. You had no right to interfere in our business. Actually, I had every right. Those doctors asked for my professional opinion, and I gave it to them. That's called capitalism, Marcus. That's called the free market. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he said, This isn't over. No, I agreed. It's not. Marcus and Isabella went through with their wedding, but I could tell from the pictures posted on social media that it wasn't the celebration they had planned. They looked stressed, worried, fake smiling for the cameras. Their dream of opening their own practice had been crushed, but they still had their jobs at Metropolitan Hospital. They were both making good money as attending physicians. They would be fine, just not as successful as they had hoped. But I wasn't done with them yet. While they were on their honeymoon in Europe, which I'm sure they put on credit cards they couldn't afford, I was making my next move. I had been promoted again at Riverside Medical Group, this time to Vice President of Operations. The promotion came with a substantial raise and, more importantly, significant influence over which practices Riverside partnered with and which doctors they recruited. Riverside was expanding rapidly, acquiring smaller practices and bringing successful doctors into their network. They were becoming one of the largest medical groups in the state, and I was helping drive that growth. But I also had my eye on a bigger prize. Metropolitan Hospital, where Marcus and Isabella worked, was struggling financially. Like many hospitals, they were facing pressure from insurance companies, rising costs, and competition from newer facilities. I had been watching their situation carefully through my industry connections, and I had an idea for how to make their problems much worse. 6 months after Marcus and Isabella's wedding, Riverside Medical Group made a major acquisition. We purchased Henderson Medical Center, a smaller hospital that had been Metropolitan's main competitor for certain types of patients. I had recommended the acquisition to our board of directors. Henderson was undervalued, I argued, and with the right management, it could be turned into a highly profitable facility. What I didn't mention in my presentation was that acquiring Henderson would allow us to poach Metropolitan's best doctors and most profitable service lines. The acquisition was approved, and I was put in charge of the integration process. My first priority was recruiting new physicians to join our expanded network. I started with the doctors I already had relationships with. Dr. Patterson, Dr. Kim, and several others agreed to move their practices to Henderson Medical Center. We offered them better compensation packages, more autonomy, and state-of-the-art facilities. But I also targeted doctors who were currently working at Metropolitan Hospital. I made it known throughout the medical community that Henderson was looking for exceptional physicians to join our team. We were offering signing bonuses, research opportunities, and partnership tracks that Metropolitan couldn't match. Within 6 months, we had recruited 12 of Metropolitan's best doctors. Their cardiology department was decimated. Their internal medicine program lost half its staff. Their emergency department was severely understaffed. Marcus and Isabella watched as their colleagues left for better opportunities at Henderson. They watched as Metropolitan's patient census dropped and the hospital's financial situation became increasingly desperate. And they had no idea that the woman orchestrating their workplace's decline was the wife Marcus had discarded for being just a nurse. While I was busy destroying Metropolitan Hospital, I was also keeping track of Marcus and Isabella's personal finances. Remember, I had access to their financial information from when they had tried to start their practice. And through my connections in the banking industry, I was able to monitor their ongoing financial situation. It wasn't good. Marcus and Isabella had bought an expensive condo during their residency, assuming they would be making much more money once they opened their own practice. When that plan fell through, they were stuck with mortgage payments they could barely afford on their hospital salaries. They had also accumulated significant credit card debt financing their lifestyle and their European honeymoon. Between their student loans, their mortgage, their credit cards, and their car payments, they were spending more than they were earning. I knew it was only a matter of time before they got into serious trouble. I just needed to help that process along. Through a shell company I had set up, I purchased Marcus and Isabella's mortgage from their original lender. This is a common practice in the mortgage industry. Banks sell mortgages to investors all the time. Once I owned their mortgage, I had significant leverage over their financial situation. I waited for them to be late on a payment. It didn't take long. 3 months after I acquired their mortgage, they were 30 days behind. Most mortgage companies would send a few reminder notices and work with borrowers to get back on track. I went straight to foreclosure proceedings. Marcus and Isabella suddenly found themselves facing the loss of their home with very little warning and no opportunity to negotiate a payment plan. The foreclosure notice was served to them on a Tuesday. By Thursday, Marcus was calling every number he could find, trying to reach someone who could help him save his house. One of those numbers was mine. When Marcus called me, I was sitting in my office at Henderson Medical Center. I had just finished a meeting about our latest physician recruitment campaign. We had successfully recruited 3 more doctors away from Metropolitan, including the head of their orthopedic surgery department. "Emma," Marcus said when I answered the phone, "I need your help." "Hello, Marcus. What can I do for you?" "Isabella and I are in trouble. Someone bought our mortgage and they're trying to foreclose on our condo. We're only 30 days late on one payment, but they won't negotiate with us. I don't understand what's happening." "That sounds terrible," I said. "Who bought your mortgage?" "Some company called Henderson Investment Holdings. I've never heard of them." I smiled. Henderson Investment Holdings was my shell company, named after the hospital where I now worked. "Have you tried contacting them directly?" I asked. "I've been calling for 2 days. Nobody will talk to me. They just keep saying that the foreclosure proceedings are already in motion and there's nothing they can do." "Maybe you should get a lawyer." "We can't afford a lawyer, Emma. We can barely afford our bills as it is. Look, I know things ended badly between us, but you work in healthcare finance now, right? You understand this stuff. Do you have any advice?" I paused for a moment, savoring the irony. Marcus Rodriguez, successful doctor, was calling his ex-wife the nurse for financial advice. "Marcus," I said, "I'm sorry you're going through this, but I'm not sure how I can help. Foreclosure is a legal process. If you can't make your payments, the lender has the right to take the property. We can make our payments. We just had one bad month. Isabella had some medical bills that we weren't expecting, and it threw off our budget." "What kind of medical bills?" She had some anxiety issues after we got married. The stress of everything that happened with the practice, the financial pressure, she's been seeing a therapist and taking medication. Isabella was having mental health issues. Part of me felt bad about that, but a larger part of me thought it was poetic justice. I'm sorry to hear that, I said. But Marcus, you're both doctors. You make good money. Can't you just pay the back amount and get current on your loan? That's what we're trying to do. But this company won't accept our payment. They're saying we have to pay the entire loan balance immediately or lose the house. This was true. When I initiated foreclosure proceedings, I had demanded full payment of the loan balance, which was my right as the lender. How much is the full balance? I asked, though I already knew. 380,000. Emma, we don't have $380,000. Nobody has that kind of cash just sitting around. I'm sorry, Marcus. I wish I could help, but this is out of my area of expertise. Please, I'm begging you. If you know anyone in the finance industry who might be able to help us, or if you have any ideas about how we can stop this foreclosure. I let him beg for a few more seconds. Then I said, Marcus, there might be one option. What? Well, sometimes in foreclosure situations, the lender might be willing to sell the property to a third party for less than the full loan amount. It's called a short sale. The borrowers still lose the house, but they avoid the worst credit damage from a foreclosure. Would this Henderson Investment Holdings Company consider that? I don't know. You'd have to ask them. But you'd need to find a buyer who was willing to purchase the property quickly and for cash. Do you know anyone who might be interested? I pretended to think about it. Actually, I might know someone. There's a woman I work with who's been looking for investment properties. She has cash available and she's looking for deals in your area. Would you be willing to ask her? I could mention it to her. What's your condo worth? We paid $450,000 for it 2 years ago. The market has gone up since then, so it's probably worth around $480,000 now. And you owe $380,000? Right. So in a normal sale, you'd walk away with about $100,000 after paying off the loan and closing costs. Exactly. That money would help us get back on our feet. I paused again. Marcus, I need to be honest with you. In a short sale situation, the buyer is usually looking for a significant discount. My friend probably wouldn't pay full market value. How much would she pay? I'd have to ask her, but probably something like $350,000, maybe $360,000 if the property is in really good condition. This would leave Marcus and Isabella with nothing, but it would save them from the worst credit damage of a foreclosure. That's not very much, Marcus said. No, it's not. But it might be your best option. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Could you talk to your friend? Just to see if she might be interested? I'll ask her, I said. But Marcus, you should know that if she's interested, this would have to happen quickly. These short sale situations move fast. I understand. Emma, thank you. I know I don't deserve your help after everything that happened between us, but I appreciate you being willing to make a phone call. Of course, I said. We were married for 5 years. I don't wish you ill. That was a lie, but Marcus didn't need to know that. 3 days later, I called Marcus back. I talked to my friend, I said. She's interested, but she can only offer $340,000, and she needs to close within 2 weeks. $340,000? That's $40,000 less than we owe on the mortgage. Yes, which means you'd have to bring money to the closing to pay off the loan completely. We don't have $40,000. Then you might have to let the foreclosure proceed. Marcus was quiet for a moment. What if Isabella and I could come up with $20,000? Could your friend go up to $360,000? I pretended to consider this. I'll ask her, but I don't think so. She's looking for a good deal, and there are other properties she's considering. 2 days of negotiations later, we settled on $350,000. Marcus and Isabella had to borrow $30,000 from Isabella's parents to make up the difference and pay closing costs. The closing took place on a Friday afternoon. I attended as the representative of my friend, the buyer. Marcus and Isabella had no idea that the woman purchasing their home for $130,000 less than it was worth was Marcus's ex-wife. They walked away from the closing with nothing. No equity, no nest egg, no financial security. They had to move into a rental apartment and start over financially. And I walked away with a beautiful condo that I immediately put back on the market for $480,000. 6 months after I purchased Marcus and Isabella's condo, Metropolitan Hospital was in serious financial trouble. They had lost so many doctors to Henderson Medical Center that they were struggling to provide basic services. Their emergency department was understaffed, their specialist clinics were closing, and their reputation in the community was suffering. The hospital's board of directors was desperate. They needed someone who could turn the situation around, someone who understood both the clinical and business sides of healthcare. They offered me the job of Chief Operating Officer. The irony was delicious. Marcus and Isabella's employer wanted to hire Marcus's ex-wife to save their failing hospital. I accepted the position, of course. It came with a substantial salary increase and significant authority over hospital operations. My first day on the job, I called a meeting with all department heads to discuss the hospital's financial situation and our strategy for recovery. Marcus and Isabella were both required to attend as heads of their respective clinical units. When I walked into that conference room and took my seat at the head of the table, the look on Marcus's face was priceless. Pure shock, followed by recognition, followed by what I can only describe as terror. Isabella looked confused at first, then whispered something to Marcus. When he whispered back, her face went white. "Good morning, everyone," I said to the room. "For those who don't know me, I'm Emma Thompson, your new Chief Operating Officer. I'm here to help turn this hospital around and restore it to profitability." I made eye contact with Marcus. "I look forward to working with all of you." The meeting lasted 2 hours. We discussed budget cuts, service line closures, and staff reductions. Throughout the entire meeting, Marcus and Isabella sat frozen in their chairs, saying nothing. After the meeting, Marcus approached me. "Emma," he said, "we need to talk." "Of course, Doctor." "Rodriguez, my office is on the 7th floor. Why don't you and Dr. Santos come see me this afternoon?" That afternoon, Marcus and Isabella came to my office. It was a corner office with a view of the city, much nicer than anything Marcus had ever had. "Please, sit down," I said, gesturing to the chairs across from my desk. They sat, and for a moment, nobody spoke. Finally, Marcus said, "How did this happen?" "How did what happen?" "You know what I mean. How did you go from being a nurse to running a hospital? How did you become successful enough to destroy our practice plans and buy our house?" I smiled. "I went back to school, Marcus. I got an MBA. I worked hard. I made connections. I built a career. You deliberately sabotaged us. I provided accurate business analysis to doctors who requested it. I purchased a property that was in foreclosure. I accepted a job offer from a hospital that needed experienced healthcare management. Everything I did was legal and ethical." "But you did it to hurt us," Isabella said. It was the first time she had spoken. "I did it to succeed," I corrected. "The fact that my success happened to interfere with your plans is just a coincidence." "That's bullshit and you know it," Marcus said. "Is it?" "Marcus, let me ask you something. When you divorced me to be with Isabella, were you thinking about my feelings? When you took everything I had sacrificed for your education and used it to build a life with another woman, Were you worried about hurting me? Marcus didn't answer. You treated me like I was disposable, I continued. Like 5 years of marriage and sacrifice meant nothing because I wasn't good enough for the successful doctor you had become. You thought I was just a nurse who would fade into the background of your important new life. I stood up and walked around my desk to face them. But here's what you never understood, Marcus. I wasn't just a nurse. I was a woman with intelligence, ambition, and nothing left to lose. And when you have nothing left to lose, you can accomplish amazing things. Isabella was crying now. We're sorry, she said. We're both sorry for how things happened. Sorry doesn't give me back my grandmother's jewelry, I said. Sorry doesn't give me back the 5 years I spent working 3 jobs to put your husband through medical school. Sorry doesn't give me back the future I thought we were building together. What do you want from us? Marcus asked. I want you to understand what you did to me. And I want you to live with the consequences. Are you going to fire us? I considered the question. That depends. Are you good doctors? We're excellent doctors, Isabella said. Then I'm not going to fire you. This hospital needs good doctors, and I'm not going to let my personal feelings interfere with patient care. Marcus looked surprised. You're not? No. But you will be working for me. Every decision you make, every patient you treat, every policy you want to implement, it all goes through me. I control your schedules, your budgets, your resources, and your future at this hospital. The full implications of this sank in. Marcus and Isabella would be spending the next several years of their careers working for the woman Marcus had betrayed and abandoned. And Marcus, I added, I want you to remember something. Every time you cash your paycheck, every time you make a decision about patient care, every time you walk through the halls of this hospital, remember that you're here because I allow you to be here. Remember that the woman you thought was beneath you is now the woman who controls your professional life. I walked back to my desk and sat down. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do. I'm running a hospital. Marcus and Isabella left without another word. As I watched them walk away, I thought about the woman I had been 8 years ago. The woman who had believed in love and partnership and sacrifice. The woman who had sold her grandmother's jewelry and worked 3 jobs for a man who saw her as disposable. That woman was gone. In her place was someone harder, smarter, and infinitely more successful. Marcus had wanted to be with someone on his level. Well, now he was. The only problem was that I was several levels above him. And I intended to stay there. I opened my laptop and got back to work. I had a hospital to run, and I was very good at my job. After all, I had learned from the best teachers possible: betrayal, heartbreak, and the burning desire for justice. Some people might call what I did revenge. I prefer to think of it as education. I was simply teaching Marcus and Isabella a lesson about consequences, and class was now in session. If you've experienced anything like this story, or know someone who has, like and subscribe. You are a strong, independent woman. Don't change. Not letting people walk all over you after they've betrayed you shows true strength of character. Remember who you are, and that is your power.